The late comedian George Carlin had a lot of great bits. A lot of them I cannot repeat on the air. But one that he had that I especially liked was about baseball. Because baseball has no clock. Baseball can go on forever. There's no timing in baseball. Fortunately, now there is. There's a pitch clock in baseball. You only have so many seconds to get ready to throw the next pitch. NASCAR racing, up until the race at Chicago, did not really have a clock. Yes, we timed every lap, but there wasn't a specific time to end the race. NASCAR announced earlier this season that they had come up with a new procedure on how to end races, especially at markets where there are no lights. We will race to a certain time, and then the next lap will be the white flag lap, and then the next lap will be the end of the race. And we saw that executed for the first time at the Chicago street course that Alex Bowman won. Brad, they had a countdown clock on the television, and they focused in on it. I don't want to influence your thoughts. Your thoughts on ending the race as a timed event.
I loved it, and here's why. If you remember last year, it was supposed to be a 100-lap race, and they went to 75. But they told teams like, okay, let's just go 10 more laps and we'll be done effectively. Well, that just blew everyone's strategy out the window. People who were planning on something, all of a sudden those plans change. For this one, it was a few hours ahead of time that they said at 8:20, this is when the clock is going to hit 0. The next flag will be the white flag, then we'll finish the race. I like that because it did allow the teams to set up a strategy for it. In fact, it allowed Blake Harris and Alex Bowman to set up the race winning strategy. So we're going to a track this weekend that doesn't have lights at Pocono. We're going to one next weekend that doesn't have lights at Indianapolis. And I hope it doesn't come into play at either of these tracks, but I like that NASCAR has what I feel is a fair system in place to do what we're doing in this way.
You know what I like about it? It's simplicity. It's easy to understand. They told us yesterday, basically when the race started, that this is what was going to happen. Television explained it several times. The leader will cross the stripe, then we'll get the white flag, then we'll get the checker flag. It was easy for myself and the fans at home to understand. It was easy for the teams to work their strategy around, as Brad said. So I thought it was fantastic, and I'm glad that NASCAR took a look at that. That's something else that in our last segment we were talking about, all the lessons learned from these 2 seasons at the street course, and that is one of them. And being able to adapt and change what you're doing to make it better is something that NASCAR is doing, and I'm proud of that.
I also liked it on the practical side that with the countdown clock going, and I'm not sure when it started, maybe 12 minutes to go or something like that when they popped it up on the screen, that I knew in 12 minutes the race was going to be over. If I had to go do something else, put a child to bed, whatever, I had 12 minutes that I knew, or I could go away for 5 and then come back for the last however many minutes and watch the race. On the practical side, I really like that. Brad, I think you'll appreciate this. Our very good friend Eric Morris that kind of runs the show for NASCAR Productions that people see at the racetrack. If he did not play Europe's The Final Countdown over the last 2 laps, I'm going to be so crushingly disappointed. So.
Oh, that is pretty funny. That would be a good one. But this is something that makes sense, and it's fun to have fun with that. Hey, I'd rather hear Europe's The Final Countdown than any number of songs that mention rain. So the Final Countdown's a fun thing. And when you count down to something, it does lead to more excitement. So
I got excited about it, and it added tension to that last lap because you knew what was going on. Somebody asked us, what happens to stage breaks in the countdown? I can't imagine the countdown probably doesn't happen unless we're already into stage 3.
You're counting down to a time. Regardless, they said 8:20. So whatever happens in the normal course of the race still happens.
So my thought about this, because when they actually went to the original red flag for heavy rain, we had not yet reached halfway.
Not even close. Or
the second stage. Having a conversation with my husband, and he said, well, they declared that 8:20, that's it. They'll call it because they cannot come back here again on Monday. And I'm thinking, well, my goodness, I hope that doesn't happen, because how are they going to explain the fact that they haven't reached the mark that says that this race is official? Luckily, they were able to get the race back going again, and they eclipsed that and were able to use the countdown clock to perfection. But when you think about it, that would have put them in a little bit of a bind, especially at the street course, where coming back on Monday was was a really hard thing to do.
I that's a one-off event in that sense, and I think you know, NASCAR has their exception rule, and they can always pull that out, and they can go, this is pretty rare.
That's right.
And if we have precedent, last year, Brad, was it last year at Chicago?
In the Xfinity race.
They didn't make
race.
it halfway.
Yep.
Yeah, and this is official. Like they are telling you this is what happened. So you have to throw either halfway or the end of stage 2 out the window. Look, we didn't get to the end of stage 3 in the Coca-Cola 600, and basically, Christopher Bell, who won that race, got all the stage 3 playoffs points and different things like that. But you throw the halfway or end of stage 2 out the window because NASCAR says this is now an official race when the clock gets to 0.
I think I would have just liked some clarification on that yesterday because it was the first time that it happened. I would have liked in their explainer that they put out to say, now halfway or the end of the second stage is null and void. This now determines what will be official in this race.
I like. It's kind
Semantics,
of like what
I'm
happened.
sure, but
It's kind of like what happened at New Hampshire when people say, "Well, why didn't they just let them change tires on their own?" Because they're creeping towards success. They are having to make one incremental step at a time to invoke things that really didn't exist 2 or 3 years ago.
Absolutely.
And I've admonished NASCAR on time, but I like the time deal. I love the fact that we have wet weather tires. They're not perfect. There is no perfect solution. You can't stick the cars out there in downpouring rain and expect them to compete. But look at where we would have been without that.
Well, when they started, I think it was that last restart before they ended up actually putting it under a red flag. Unless you were the leader, you couldn't see anything. There was so much water on the track. So regardless of how much grip those tires had, all the drivers were basically blinded by the overspray from the tires.
And
so.
Brad, I like the fact that they let them start the race with different tires. We had slick tires and we had rain tires.
Yep.
Yeah, that was pretty cool to say, look, we're starting under a wet condition, so everyone had to put the wets on, but we'll let you come down pit road after the fact, which is still kind of weird. It almost seems like we're going to make an extra step here, but change to dry tires. And that changed the strategy and really the makeup of the race a whole lot. It's so fascinating in those situations to see what was the right decision and what was the wrong one. Not that anybody, knew, but it's just always interesting to see the way something like that plays out.
Interesting race, lot to chatter about. Would love to see them race there under perfect conditions. Maybe, just maybe next year.